Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Medlock Post radio show. This is where we educate, entertain, enlighten, and empower. The views and opinions on the Medlock Post radio show are those of the host and guests. They are not necessarily the views and opinions of Blog Talk Radio, Spreaker.com, its corporations, affiliates, or any other podcast streaming services. Thank you for joining the show today, and here is your host, Richard G. Medlock.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and to the republic for which it stands. We're going to get into that a little bit today, maybe more than a little bit. We are a constitutional republic. We are not a democracy. Yes, we're going to cover that again. We're going to talk about Biden's speech last night and something that Hillary Clinton came out and, ladies and gentlemen, it's eye-opening what is coming out of their mouths right now. Isn't it great? It's just fascinating. The final week before a major election of what is happening, what is being said, who is the common sense side, and who is the radical, out of control side. I don't know any other way to put it. And you're going to hear and see that on today's program. I'm your host, Richard G. Medlock, and we're here on this November 3rd, 2022. Episode 77. And the title of the show is Democracy Under Attack. And it should be The Republic Under Attack. We'll help you understand that better today as we move along. Now, this weekend, What do we get to do? We get to cut the bottom of the blanket at the bottom of the blanket off and sew it back onto the top of the blanket. So we're starting Sunday, we will only have 24-hour days instead of 25-hour days. So 24 hours versus 25 hours. Isn't that what they always tell us? The day is longer. On daylight savings time, the day is longer. So we're only going to have 24 hours a day starting Sunday. And you're wondering, what's he talking about the blanket? It's an Indian saying, a Native American saying, that only the white men can think they can cut off a foot off the top of the blanket and sew it onto the bottom and think they have a longer blanket. And this is referring to daylight savings time. All right. And people are already complaining, folks, on Facebook. It's hilarious. Well, starting next week, we'll be eating supper in the dark. Well, it's simple, folks. Turn on your lights. Then you won't be in the dark. Except if you live in California, where who knows if you're going to have lights or not. So that's a big event this weekend, right before the elections. The markets are not happy with the Federal Reserve. They were okay yesterday with the 75 basis points raise in interest rates. They were fine with that. The market went up, I think it was like 500 points. But then they started listening to his comments, and the Federal Reserve is pessimistic about the future. So the market dived and ended up down 500 points, and it's down this morning almost 200 points. The market didn't like those comments yesterday. And that's not a good time for him to be coming out right before an election and saying, you know, we don't see anything improving anyway too fast. We're going to have to keep raising rates. We don't know how much, but we got to keep raising right before the election. Not good for the Democrat. George Washington gave us some counsel. He did this in his letter to officers of the Army, the Newburgh Address, March 15th, 1783. Quote, "And let me conjure you, in the name of our common country, as you value your own sacred honor, as you respect the rights of humanity, and as you regard the military and national character of America, to express your utmost horror and detestation of the man who wishes, under any specious pretenses, to overturn the liberties of our country, and who wickedly attempts to open the floodgates of civil discord and deluge our rising empire in blood." Unquote. George Washington said, if there's a man out there that doesn't like this country and he's going to try to tear it down, you do what? You, with your utmost horror and detestation, abhor this man. Well, can you say we have a few of those in America today? Even in our government? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, sad to say. I got some other quotes for you. To help put some things into context, to help you decide how you're going to vote. Now, normally, history has shown that most people 5 days before an election have already made up their mind. And it's going to take just an eruption of something to get them to change their mind. That reminds me, this wasn't on my list. I had a conversation with a friend the other day. It's kind of interesting. And he's thinking, his thinking is, most people don't care about what's going on. Most people are going to vote party line like they have in the past, and it's not going to be good on Tuesday for the country or for Republicans. He says people just they vote party line no matter what. And I says, do you really believe that? Oh yeah. That's the way they're going to vote. He says most people don't care. They're not paying attention. And we had a conversation, further conversation. I asked him some questions, and I said, people are voting from their pocketbooks this time. This is why there's going to be a change in leadership. He says, I didn't think of that. I wanted to say, well, haven't you been paying attention? But there are people, he's right about one thing. There are people out there that don't pay attention. They just go about their business. They don't care what goes on in Washington. They don't care about stuff. They don't follow anything. Those people don't vote. Most of them don't. They don't care who's in office as long as they have what they feel like they need. Now, the last 2 years, two and a half years, started with the pandemic, the lockdowns, it's affected negatively a great many of people and families and businesses in this country. And they know who to blame. And it's the Democrats. They started paying attention when they found out what their kids were being indoctrinated with in the schools. They started paying attention when they're mandated to go get a vaccine, or they lost their job because they didn't get the vaccine. Their incomes went down. Their spending power went down. Prices went up and still going up. And they're paying attention. I talked to my cousin over the weekend. In the last election, voted for Biden. They had never voted before in their life. Could care less. They didn't pay attention. But all of a sudden, in 2020, they got all caught up in it for some reason. I don't know why. And they listened to the media. They hated Trump. How could, let's get him out of there. And they just went ape. Oh, we got to get him out of there. He's ruining America. But I talked to him the other day. He brought up some stuff. And I says, has your way of thinking changed? And he says, oh, yeah. He says, I'd love to take my vote back. You know what? There's a lot of Democrats are saying that right now because their lives have been turned upside down. And that's why I played the preamble, or not the preamble, but the Pledge of Allegiance. To the republic for which it stands. The Declaration of Independence is one of the most important documents in human history, and every citizen of the United States has the privilege of enjoying its benefits every day. Does that seem like a strong statement? The Declaration of Independence is one of the most prominent efforts by human beings to stand up in the face of tyranny and proclaim that every human being has God-given rights to be free, to be protected, and to pursue their lives the way they want to. The Declaration was written by the rebelling founding fathers of the United States to declare their independence from the rule of Great Britain. Before its creation, most human beings lived under kings or dictatorships or one form or another. The men who signed the Declaration of Independence said, quote, "Enough," unquote, and changed the history of the world. Did you know that you are a direct beneficiary of the Declaration of Independence? You may have never considered it, but the founding fathers of the United States have given you an opportunity that few people have ever had in human history, and that is the opportunity to be free. The founding fathers did not want to live under the oppression of tyrannical dictators. They believed that God made each person to be free, to have his own conscience, and to be free to make his own choices in life. The English king and parliament had put many unjust restrictions and laws on the American colonists, such as abolishing their local legislatures, forcing them to house soldiers on their own property, resisting the appointment of judges and other officials who disagreed with England, putting military authority and power over civilian authority, restricting their ability to trade with foreign countries, conducting sham trials of government officials accused of wrongdoing, levying taxes without their consent, and a host of other issues. The founding fathers tried for many years to get England to amend its ways and reason with them. Finally, when England wouldn't respond, the Americans decided that it was right to cast off the yoke of bondage the English were putting on them so they could live in freedom. The American founders had very strong beliefs about the sanctity of human choice and human conscience, meaning that each person should have the choice to believe what he wants to and not be forced into anything against his will. Today we live in freedom because of the principles these founders believed. We have freedoms of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to choose our own leaders, freedom of the press, freedom to choose where we can work, who we marry, where we live, and many, many other freedoms. We can follow our own dreams instead of living for the will of the latest dictator. If you have never read the Declaration of Independence before, you really should read it to get a basic understanding of American freedom and the reasons behind the Revolutionary War. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the Declaration of Independence. We haven't forgot it. We haven't forgot the list of grievances against the king that were put into the Declaration. And we can read every one of those grievances in the Declaration and apply them to our government today. Every one. Try it. Break it out. Get you a copy of the Declaration and read it. Now, in 1787, the Northwest Ordinance was written. Now, what was the Northwest Ordinance? You had the colonies, the 13 colonies, or states at this point. Matter of fact, in 1787, the Constitutional Convention had not started. Not yet, it's being formed. But a Northwest Ordinance was written. There was a constitution for states like Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, and that area in the Midwest that were not part of the United States yet. To read from Article 3 of the Northwest Ordinance, quote, "Religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged." Religion, morality, and knowledge. There are the three basic things that the Founding Fathers focused on when writing the United States Constitution. They put it in the Northwest Ordinance. That's another good document to go read and see what went wrong, because it had information in there, guidelines on how to treat the Indians, and it wasn't followed. Now, I played a soundbite from Hillary Clinton the other day going off about the vast right-wing conspiracy. And she has to keep sticking her nose out there, or her face, or whatever it is. She still has to keep sticking it out there. She thinks she's somebody, or is wanting to try to be somebody. So she came out the other day, GOP rhetoric, a threat to the heart of our democracy. Now again, folks, we're not a democracy. We're a republic. When they refer to a democracy, they're referring to their rule of law. Go back and listen to my episodes 2 and 3, way back when I first got started, 2-part series on rule of law versus ruler's law. And you will understand what the Founding Fathers were talking about and see what's happened today, because we're living under ruler's law. President stands up there and threatens an industry. That's tyranny. That's rule of law. That's tyranny. All right. So Hillary Clinton was on MSNBC, the readout, on Tuesday. And she told them that Republicans' crazy, violent rhetoric threatens American democracy. There has always been a streak of violence, of racism, misogyny, Clinton said, claiming anti-Semitism within the GOP comes roughly 1 week from the November 8th midterm elections, where Republicans are predicted to regain control of both the House and the Senate. You get this? There's always been a streak of violence and racism and misogyny. Quote her again, the level of just plain crazy, violent hate rhetoric coming out of the Republicans, I want voters to stop and ask themselves, would we trust somebody who is stirring up these violent feelings, who is pointing fingers, scapegoating, making a joke about a violent attack on Paul Pelosi? Why would you entrust power to people who are either themselves unable to see how terrible it is that someone would be attacked in their home, or don't really care because they think it will somehow get them votes that will get them elected? This is a real threat to the heart of democracy. Now, folks, my first question is, please name for me somebody from the GOP that has said or done those things, either about Paul Pelosi or this streak of violence, racism, and misogyny. They're stirring up violent feelings. Who is pointing fingers, scapegoating? I know you're sitting there or driving or whatever, and you're saying, well, wait a minute. She's actually describing the Democratic Marxists. That's right. And the media. Don't forget the media. They do all this too. They are the propaganda arm of the Democratic Marxists. So between the two of them, who stood on the steps of the Supreme Court and threatened specifically 3 judges that if you don't vote our way, you will have heck to pay? Chuck Schumer. Has any GOP representative ever done anything like that? No. They should have called her out on the readout on MSNBC and said, Hillary, who are some of these people? Can you name them? Where and when did they say these things? Well, she would have just stammered and stuttered and probably mentioned Donald Trump. Who went out and stirred up in 2020 Black Lives Matters and Antifa? AOC was one of them. Ilan Talab was another. And on and on. We can name them. Who set up a situation, an organization, to raise bail money to get all these rioters out of jail? Kamala Harris. Not anybody from the GOP. Which governors and state legislators are passing laws or deciding there's no bail for criminals? You can walk, you can go, you can do whatever you want. We're not going to prosecute you. Who's doing that? In Democratic-held states. So when Hillary Clinton gets up and starts pointing the finger to the GOP, she better start naming names. This thing with Paul Pelosi has everybody asking questions. I mean, the jokes about hammers are all over the place. It's what's going to happen, folks. This is America. This is what happens. Nobody is saying we're glad he got beat up. Not like those when Paul Ryan got attacked in his yard by a bunch of Democrat wackos. When he got beat up, they were hoping he would die. When Trump got COVID when he was in office, they literally stood there hoping he would die. Now, show me somewhere where a GOP has made a comment that, oh, Biden has COVID, I hope he dies. Show me. Now, they'll probably take that comment, cut that out and say, Medlock wants Biden to die. Well, go ahead and try it. I'll just play the full soundbite. So, what does this tell you? We hadn't even got to Biden yet and his comments from last night. This tells us one main thing. The Democratic Marxists have none, zip, zero, nada principles to stand on. You're going to listen to Biden's soundbite in a minute. He tried to do that. He tried to stand on principles, and it just fell apart. Charles Barkley, the former star basketball player, said, quote, "We are so stupid following our politicians, whether they are Republican or Democrat," unquote. That's just a great quote. We're just stupid following politicians. Folks, they work for us. They're not the smartest people in the room. We, the people, collectively are the smartest people. C.S. Lewis said, quote, "One of the most cowardly things ordinary people do is to shut their eyes to facts," unquote. This is what the Democratic Marxists do. They shut their eyes, like Thomas Sowell said. They are so enhanced with their programs that they don't see the ugly they've created in the real world. And that's what's happened here, folks. They've created ugly in the world, but that's what they want. But they're going to blame everybody else for it. All right, Joe Biden. Have I got his clip ready to go? I do. All I have to do is press a button. Maybe so. In Biden's talk last night, he must have listened to Hillary on Tuesday. Okay? Biden suggests voting for Republicans is a threat to democracy. Folks, that's all they have to stand on right now. Nothing else. They can't stand on abortion, although they're trying to. They can't stand on crime rates. I mean, in New York, Governor Hochul is in so much trouble because her policies the other day, some wife called the police, her husband's threatened to kill her, they hauled him away, and the judge released him with no cash bail. He went back home and killed her, actually the next day. So New Yorkers are up in arms, and this is a week before the election. They're up in arms over that. They're up in arms up there over crime. All right, and then Biden singles out MAGA Republicans and all this stuff. But anyway, let's listen to his soundbite here.
No, there's a lot at stake in these midterm elections. From our economy, to the safety of our streets, to our personal freedoms, the future of health care, Social Security, Medicare, it's all important. But we'll have our differences. We'll have our difference of opinion. And that's what it's supposed to be. But there's something else at stake. Democracy itself. It's estimated that there are more than 300 election deniers on the ballot all across America this year. We can't ignore the impact this is having on our country. This is a path to chaos in America. It's unprecedented. It's unlawful. And it's un-American. I've said before, you can't love your country only when you win. So today, I appeal to all Americans, regardless of party, to meet this moment of national and generational importance. We must vote knowing what's at stake and not just the policy of the moment, but institutions that have held us together as we sought a more perfect union are also at stake. We must vote knowing who we have been, what we're at risk of becoming. You know, American democracy is under attack because the defeated former president of the United States refuses to accept the results of the 2020 election. We need to start looking out for each other again, seeing ourselves as we the people, not as entrenched enemies. This is a choice we can make. This union and chaos are not inevitable. There's been anger before in America. There's been division before in America. But we've never given up on the American experiment. We can't do that now. The remarkable thing about American democracy is this. Just enough of us, on just enough occasions, have chosen not to dismantle democracy, but to preserve democracy. We must choose that path again. Because democracy is on the ballot.
Let's see. Crime in the streets. Chaos. All this other stuff. Who's created all that? Not the GOP. They haven't done it. Trump didn't do it. Although they're trying to make you think he did January 6th, which was basically not really much. So you sit there and listen to him. Oh, do you still want all this stuff in, crime in the streets? Yeah, well, fine. Vote for Democrats, and it will continue. Again, they are ignoring the facts of what's going on. He further said the midterm elections we cannot allow the dark forces that thirst for power. Well, who are those dark forces that thirst for power? It's you. It's Obama. It's the globalist. It's Chuck Schumer and Pelosi and the other Democratic Marxists. You're the ones, the dark forces that thirst for power. He said, we're facing a defining moment. We must, with one overwhelming, unified voice, speak as a country and say there's no place for voter intimidation or political violence in America. Well, you know what? I agree with that. But you guys are the ones that caused it. You will not allow voter IDs. What's wrong with voter IDs? Proving you're a citizen to get to register to vote, and then prove who you are when you go to vote. What's so hard about that? And early voting for this election over the last week and a half has been record turnout, but they're still screaming voter suppression. Still screaming it. He further says this violence against Democrats, Republicans, and nonpartisan officials just doing their jobs are the consequence of lies told for power and profit. Lies repeated over and over to generate a cycle of anger, hate, vitriol, and even violence. Well, folks, he mentioned everything in his speech: chaos, division, fear, hatred, violence. He mentioned all five of those that the Democratic Socialists and the Marxists and the globalists use to gain power. He mentioned all five. And we're supposed to sit here and just, oh, what a beautiful speech, you're calling us to unity. Well, he did that in his inaugural speech, and what has happened? Obama, in his inaugural speech, said, I'm going to do away with racism in America. And he did just the opposite. So Biden went from giving his inaugural address to the White House and signed dozens of executive orders doing away with Republican policies, but republic policies that were in the Constitution, and he signed them off, did away with them. You've heard me use this quote before, Immanuel Kant. Quote, but a lie is a lie, and in itself intrinsically evil, whether it be told with good or bad intents. A lie is a lie is a lie, and it's intrinsically evil. There is no white lie, folks. Oh, I just told a little small white lie. No, really. So when you sit here and listen to their words and compare it to their actions, they don't jive. They don't fit in the same box. Just like when he goes out and threatens the oil companies and says, I have done nothing to stand in your way of producing oil. Bold-faced lie. And you want to vote for this? Marcus Tullius Cicero said this. It's a little lengthy, but there's a lot to this. Quote, a nation can survive its fools and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within. But it cannot survive treason from within. An enemy at the gate is less formidable, for he is known and carries his banner openly. But the traitor moves amongst us, those within the gate freely, his sly whispers rustling through all the alleys, heard in the very halls of government itself. For the traitor appears not a traitor. He speaks in accents familiar to his victims, and he wears their face and their arguments. He appeals to the baseness that lies deep in the hearts of all men. He rots the soul of a nation. He works secretly and unknown in the night to undermine the pillars of the city. He infects the body politic so it can no longer resist. A murderer is less to fear. Unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, you're saying, well, wait a minute. All these Democratic Marxists out there running around campaigning, they're not hiding anything. They're supporting abortion. They're supporting criminals can go free, let them out of the prisons, higher taxes, shut down fossil fuels, and on and on. And this quote used to refer to them years ago. Now, who does it refer to? But the traitor moves amongst those within the gate freely. He is sly, whispers, rustles through all the alleys, heard in the very halls of government itself. It refers to the administrative state, this bureaucratic baloney that's been set up that are actually running the government, making the laws and regulations and taxes. This is who we're dealing with, the administrative state. The Democratic Marxists know they are losing and have lost a lot of the support of the American people. They have had to return to their very, very, very old tactic of saying the GOP will take away your Social Security and Medicare. Well, the Democratic Marxists have done a very good job of that themselves. Last year, the Democratic Marxists voted to take money away from Social Security. You didn't know that, did you? No, because it wasn't reported. And no GOP stood up and talked about it. What has inflation done to Social Security and Medicare? Now, wow, come January, we get an 8.7% increase in Social Security. Last year, it was like 2% when inflation was running at 8, 9, 10%. And now this year we've been running 8.5% inflation, but we're not going to get the increase till January. That's taking away your Social Security, folks. It's buying power. Same with Medicare. Oh, they're going to lower our rate $5.42. Wow. Boy. However, back in the like March or April, what did the Biden administration do? They increased all welfare payments and SNAP cards 20%. Way back when. And did nothing to help Social Security. Folks, they wanted to go broke. So we'll all die off, I guess. Now, normally in the past, when we received a Social Security cost of living increase, the amount that went up just somehow miraculously equaled the same amount they raised the Medicare premium. So you stayed flat. Remember, under Obama, for 2 or 3 straight years, there was no cost of living increase. We're going, whoa, what's going on here? But they have used this argument, and they had to bring it out a few days ago because they don't have anything else to stand on, and they've used this since the 1960s. Oh, the GOP is going to take your Social Security and Medicare away. In the 80s, it was, they're going to take Social Security and Medicare away, and they're going to take your kids' lunches away at school. They tried that for a while. That didn't work. So here again, they're going back to something that is a lie to try to get you to not vote for GOP, but vote for us, although we can't tell you why, but don't vote for them because they're going to take your Social Security away. Well, I can tell you right now, most people I know on Social Security, my friends and all, we've lived through this. We've seen this year after year after year. But we also see when they come after us in other ways. And inflation is one of those ways. The household income under Trump went up like $6,600 a year. Now it is down $6,000 a year. So all of that gain that was made is lost with inflation on top of it. But they're mandating employers raise rates, hourly wages. The word mandate is a word used by Marxists and tyrants to control the people. The mandate is not a legally binding law or order in America. when people are punished for not obeying a mandate, then a country has reached a point of corporate and government totalitarianism, i.e., the biggest thing in point is the vaccines. If you don't get your COVID vaccines, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't leave your house, you can't go to work, you can't check out a library book. All these businesses, these corporations, you got to have a vaccine, you can't come to work. They fired them. Well, guess what? Courts are overturning these things. And not only are they saying you have to give them their job back, you got to, for what? Because some Marxist idiots in Washington, D.C. said, we mandate that you get a vaccine or we're all going to die. Well, we all didn't die. And they still have the COVID, what's it called, things in place. Biden won't release the pandemic rules and regulations. Why? Because 15 million people will lose their free health care. And if he does it before the election, they'll go vote somewhere else. So he's going to wait, just let it run out at the end of the year or the end of January, and then they can lose it. But in the meantime, they voted Democrats because it's free. Yesterday, I talked about how the Biden administration is trying to expand the welfare state. They've been running a covert operation in Oregon, Louisiana, and Arizona. A Medicaid, which is just for health care. Now it's for everything. Food, housing, clothes, furniture, whatever you want. And they're running this experiment in those 3 states. And they're going to try to take it nationwide. Medicaid. But what about Medicare? You going to let Medicare go broke? All right. So, and let me correct, and I did this in the comments on when you pull up the site on Spreaker or Blog Talk Radio. I was listening back to it, and I was saying that the study showed that a family of 4 not working will get $70,000 to $90,000. I said per month, and I should have said per year. So $70,000 to $90,000 a year in benefits from this expanded program, and it's probably going to go up because they'll make adjustments for inflation on the go and leave us senior citizens behind. What was the role of Medicaid? Why was it created? It was created to help disabled individuals. Yes, those that are disabled. Now, maybe one of the reasons they're trying to turn it into an all-inclusive card is because most people, most doctors, hospitals, etc., are not taking Medicaid cards anymore. Oh, you have Medicaid? No, you got to pay cash. Because they don't get paid anything. Now, I can tell you what, I have firsthand experience with Medicaid. My son is disabled. And it is a battle every 2-3 months with the IRS, the Social Security. It is a battle with them. That and other things. If you're truly disabled, they could care less about you. But again, they're trying to expand. Oh, vote for us, the Democratic Marxists, and we'll take all your pain away. we know that that is a lie. They're just going to create more pain. All right, time is flying here, ladies and gentlemen. I just looked at the countdown clock, and we've almost, not quite, used up the first hour. I want to play this next soundbite because, again, the efforts out there to divide people, to create racism, to create different classes, to have the classes not like each other, to have the poor hate the rich. I don't know why. Just because they worked harder and they create and they know how to manage, versus those that sit back and depend on the government and sit there and say, well, why don't I have what they have? Government, you need to give me that. Let me give you a case in point here. A few years ago, I had a friend, his son, his third child, was a senior in high school, and he got a job at a national hamburger franchise. And this franchisee, he's a nice guy. I mean, I go in there to eat. They're not the best. They're kind of greasy, but we go in there every now and then. But anyway, his son was working there. So I'm having a chat with him one day, and he says, my son, or I asked him, I said, how's he doing at his work? He says, he's driving me nuts. He says, he's bought into all this garbage at school that everything should be equal. Equity, right? Equity. Everything should be equal. And he felt, the son felt, that he should be paid what the franchise owner is making. Yeah, that kind of thumped your brain, didn't it? Instead of making, $10 an hour, which I think it was back then, or even less. This was like 5-6 years ago. Making, let's just say $10 an hour, and this guy's raking in all kind of money. And even though my friend tried to tell him, well, he invested X number of thousands of dollars. He has put in work. He knows the industry. He has to hire everybody and train them. He has to make sure everything's ordered so the supplies are there every day so they can meet the orders from the meat to the buns to the pickles to the lettuce, tomato, everything else. But the kid wanted to be paid what the owner made. And he never got over that. And it's sad how things turned out there. The reason I'm saying that, I want to play this soundbite. It's 5 minutes long, but it's very educational. This is from PragerU. Diversity, equity, inclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm playing this for a reason, but listen to this carefully.
20 or 50 or even 100 years ago, if you asked someone which of the world's countries was the most diverse, most equitable, and most inclusive, they would have almost certainly answered the United States. Not anymore. What changed? Well, nothing and everything. Nothing in the sense that America is still the opportunity-rich place it's always been. And everything because the progressive left has hijacked those three words, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and turned them into weapons of mass destruction. This DEI trio makes up the neutron bomb that has laid waste to a good part of our educational and corporate institutions. Given the damage that has been done, it might be a good idea to see what these words used to mean and what they mean now. Diversity used to mean that people of different backgrounds were free to join a group or association. Equity used to mean enforcing equal standards for all individuals and groups. Inclusion used to mean allowing people of every background and identity to participate in a group or association. Now, in their DEI context, these words all mean one thing: applying unequal standards to ensure preferential outcomes for individuals and groups based on race, sex, and gender identity. The DEI movement is not about a sincere desire to make educational or corporate institutions more diverse, more equitable, or more inclusive. If you don't believe me, try having an open discussion on your company message board or at your next DEI seminar about why the same standards should apply to everyone, everywhere, regardless of race, sex, or gender identity. Try that and you know what will happen. You'll be shouted down, shunned, reprimanded, and maybe fired. DEI is ultimately about only one thing: advancing those who are not white, heterosexual, and male at the expense of white, heterosexual men, regardless of their respective qualifications. If you say, well, that's fine, because white, heterosexual men had too many advantages for too long, then I would ask, what about all the women, gays, blacks, and Latinos who are born to privilege? Should they be recipients of DEI special preferences? And when do we know we've reached a DEI endpoint? When do we know that everything is finally diverse, equitable, and inclusive? There are no good answers to any of these questions. That's a feature, not a bug, of the DEI racket. America will never be able to DEI its way out of its DEI problem. It's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. You never reach your goal because it doesn't exist. You'll never quite be diverse enough, equitable enough, or inclusive enough. The DEI obsession has been great for one group of people and one group only: the lavishly paid DEI administrators at every Fortune 100 company, college, and university, and all those who work under them. Corporations now pay millions upon millions of dollars to so-called DEI experts to spread division and distrust among their own employees. It may be the single most non-productive, self-destructive thing a business can do to itself. But businesses, to their everlasting shame, are doing it anyway. They think they're trapped. If they don't set up a DEI office, that proves their company is racist, sexist, and homophobic. But if they do set up a DEI office, that proves their company is racist, sexist, and homophobic. Or why else did they set up a DEI office in the first place? Heads, DEI wins. Tails, you lose. All this is bad enough, but the DEI fraud is also condescending. It both manufactures and perpetuates victimhood. DEI assumes black people can't hack it on their own. Neither can women or anyone who falls under the LGBTQI+ umbrella. They all need what only DEI can give them because no one can compete with the white, heterosexual Superman. The truth is that Americans of all races get along fine. Intermarriage rates, to cite just one example, are higher than they have ever been. The vast majority of Americans don't even think about race. They want to work hard and get ahead, and they know that America is the best place to do that. The big lie is the DEI made-up version of American life. And thanks to woke colleges and corporations, they're shoving it down our throats. So, how do we stop them? The solution is remarkably simple. Tell the truth. When they say you're racist, tell them the truth. You're not. When they call you a whatever-phobe, tell them the truth. You're not. The truth is the only thing that will set you, me, and the entire country free from this DEI monster. I'm Christian Watson of Colorist United and host of Pensive Politics for Prager University.
Eye-opening, isn't it? Very eye-opening. Aristotle said this, quote, "The worst form of inequality is to try to make things equal," unquote. Well, others have said the same thing. Many others. It's been proven true. Now, the reason I bring this up is Mexican-born Representative Mayra Flores, representative Republican Texas, who won in a special election a couple of months ago, has been refused admission to the all-Democrat Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Yes, this diversity, equity, inclusion does not apply to those in Congress. Oh, are you surprised? Flores is the first ever Mexican-born congresswoman, but the CHC guidelines prevent Republicans from joining due to past policy disagreements. Oh, you have disagreements, so you can't come sit at the table with us. Well, if we held that everywhere we went, we'd all probably be sitting alone, even our families. Sebastian Roa, the caucus's communication director, defended the decision. Representative Flores' extreme MAGA values and their attacks on Latinos and our nation's democracy on January 6th do not align with CHC values, Roa said. Really? Extreme MAGA values. That means they uphold the Constitution. And what attacks on Latinos? Democrat Latinos and discussing policy matters? What happened on January 6th? They're still trying to make something out of that to get them votes. That's working on some people. Disappointed by the support of Hispanic Democrats for the brutal Cuban regime, which has long suppressed dissent against its communist rule, Representative Villar, Republican Florida, in 2003 formed an alternative caucus named the Congressional Hispanic Conference. Flores has made her support for President Donald Trump clear, including his positions on border security and abortion. Oh, so that's where the attacks against Latinos come in. We want to shut the border so illegals can't come in unless they do it through the immigration system legally. So you see, that's an attack on Latinos. No, it's not. It's defending the United States of America. Though Representative Henry Cuellar, Democrat Texas, is the sole pro-life Democrat in the lower chamber, Flores' position on abortion aligns more closely with the attitudes of many Hispanics, many of whom are Catholic. The Catholic Church explicitly opposes abortions in almost every case. Do you see the game that's being played here? We're going to force DEI on you. It doesn't apply to us because we're gods and we can do anything we want to do. This is a Democratic Marxist, folks. This is their thinking. We make up the rules and you have to live by them, but we don't. And we're going to Representative Flores she's not afraid to say what she wants. I put it in the category of Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's going after it. She's going after the support of the Constitution, against abortion, and all the good things. She's going after, she ran on God, family, and hard work. And those are curse words to the Democratic Marxists. Family and hard work. Oh, man. No, you need to delete that. You can't say that. God, family, and hard work. Free speech, folks. Needless to say, she was very disappointed. She said, "My thoughts after the rejection by the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, maybe I'm not the right type of taco," Flores wrote, referring to Jill Biden saying something, what did she call it? Something about tacos, not the right breakfast taco or something like that. In another post, Flores wrote, "Why am I not surprised? Once again, the party of inclusion does it again." It's more like exclusion. It says this shows they're not for the Hispanic community. They're just there for their party. And later on, Flores wrote, "But you know, I don't need them. The Hispanic community doesn't need them. We are the real voice of the Hispanic community, and we stand for the values that we were raised with: God, family, and hard work." Wow. God, family, and hard work. We need to be posting that on all our social media and see how long it takes the Department of Homeland Security to make us out to be domestic terrorists and has Facebook or the other tech giants shut that down. God, family, and hard work. Yes, that's right, folks. It's a big report. Department of Homeland Security is working with all the social media and big tech to censor our speech. It's still going on, even though it's been revealed. You know why? Because they have control of the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice will not do anything about it. Now, if this was reversed, if the Department of Homeland Security was suppressing the speech of Democratic Marxists, Merrick Garland would be all over this. But it's not. It's not. All right. I keep getting to this thing and never get to it. I'm going to do it tomorrow, I promise. It's called A Vow to Serve. Tomorrow is Friday. The next to the last day of daylight savings time, 25 hours a day. Here's some quotes I want to go through. I had a whole bunch of them. Let me do this. Speaking of diversity and equity and all that stuff, let me do this one first. There was a story here locally, and some people own some property that ran along Interstate 85, the main corridor through the upstate of South Carolina, that and I-26. And they went out, put up this big flagpole, and put up a Confederate flag. Well, the city council or the county council or the city has gone bonkers and has issued them a warning that you have to take it down. You're violating code. Now, what code are they violating? What they're saying is you do not have an entity on the property. Yes, blank property. An entity means some type of structure. And so because you don't have a structure, you can't put up a flagpole and a flag. So they've ordered them to take down this Confederate flag. And, of course, the local NAACP has gotten involved. This means racism and sexism and hatred and da-da-da-da-da. Okay? So that big argument's come back up. Do you realize that prior to the Civil War, there were in the Northeast, in New England area, in states up there, there were Union soldiers that used the Confederate flag as their battle flag. This was prior to the Civil War. It was used by Union troops. And they probably used it for a while until once the war broke out, until they realized that the Confederate took it, that's their country's flag now. So let's talk about the true meaning of the Confederate battle flag. The red in the flag represents the blood of Christ. The white border represents the protection of God. The blue X represents the Christian cross of St. Andrew. The 13 stars represents the 13 southern states of secession. Thus, the message of the Confederate battle flag is, through the blood of Christ and the protection of God, we, the 13 states, are united in our Christian fight for liberty. Now, where in there does it say they're racist, sexist, rapist, slave owners, and on that it's been accused of, that it represents hate? It represents just the opposite. This is where they want you to be ignorant. They don't want you to know the true meanings of things. Recorded part of this show. John Locke said this, quote, "The natural liberty of man is to be free from any superior power on earth and not to be under the authority of man." We're to be under the authority of our Creator. That's right. And then the United States, the rule of law is the Constitution, along with the Bible or whatever your scriptures are from your religion. Clarence Thomas said, quote, "Since well before 1787, liberty has been understood as freedom from government action, not entitlement to government benefits." We've already talked about that yesterday and today. Oh, let's expand welfare state. The Cloward-Piven theory is in full force. And I've got a whole episode on that. Expand the welfare state so far and so wide and make it so they can't get out of it if they wanted to, that it will bankrupt and cause chaos, division, fear, hatred, and even violence. Cloward-Piven theory. They were two husband and wife communists. C.S. Lewis further observed that almost all crimes in Christian history have come about when religion is confused with politics. Politics, which always runs by the rules of runs by the rules of ungrace, allures us to trade away grace for power, a temptation the church has often been unable to resist. So politics runs by the rules of ungrace. Boy, do we see that everywhere. Look at Liz Truss in England. They politically assassinated that woman for trying to do the right thing against the globalist wishes. And they politically assassinated her and now have put a globalist in her place as prime minister. He believes in the Green New Deal. He believes in high taxes. He believes against fracking and all of that good stuff, what the globalists want them to do. And also King Charles III is a big greenie weenie. What else do I have here? Ayn Rand. Quote, "A society that tolerates intimidation as a means of settling disputes loses its moral right to exist as a society system, and its collapse does not take long to follow." Unquote. Free speech censorship, intimidation, DEI, mandated vaccines. That's intimidation, folks. That's intimidation. Now, a couple of quotes from Ezra Taft Benson. He was the Secretary of Agriculture under President Eisenhower the full 8 years, dealt directly, sat down at the table with Nikita Khrushchev, and he says, "I looked in his eyes and saw nothing but dark evil." And this was a religious Ezra Taft Benson was also a religious leader. He says, quote, another notable counterfeit system to the Lord's plan is collectivized socialism. Both communism and socialism have the same effect upon the individual, a loss of personal liberty. Compulsory benevolence is not charity. Today's socialists, who call themselves egalitarians, are using the federal government to redistribute wealth in our society, not as a matter of voluntary charity, but as a so-called matter of right, unquote. Expand the welfare state. It's your right. So I'm going to ask the question, going back to Medicaid. My son's on Medicaid. Is he going to get all that stuff? Will he be able to go out and buy furniture and TVs and all that stuff? Yeah, I bet you not. That quote was from Socialism, a Philosophy Incompatible with Man's Liberty. Sociology, a Philosophy Incompatible with Man's Liberty. What a great title. He has another quote. Quote, all right, okay. Our immediate concern is not with parties, groups, or persons, but with principles. We should not seek unity simply for unity's sake. The unity for which the Lord prayed is unity in righteousness, unity in principle. We cannot compromise good and We cannot compromise good and evil in an attempt to have peace and unity, any more than the Lord could have compromised with Satan in order to avoid the war in heaven, unquote. Now, you can find the war in heaven in Genesis, in Isaiah, and in Revelation. Talks about the war in heaven. We don't compromise with evil. But look, again, go back. Our immediate concern is not with parties, groups, or persons, but with principles. Principles like God, family, and hard work. Principles that are in the Constitution. Principles and values from our religion. That's what we look at. That's what things should be based on. Not what the party wants, not what a group wants, or a specific person. Those guiding principles that bring about public virtue that the founding fathers had to strengthen to be able to walk away from the United Kingdom, British rule, and become a self-governing. But the Democratic Marxists want to be the governors. They don't want you to be self-governing. I think we're done for the day, folks. I think I'm looking at my list, and we've covered everything except the vow to serve. I'm going to do that tomorrow. I will start with that tomorrow. So we have tomorrow and Monday before the election for our episodes. Tomorrow will be my 5th episode this week. That's the first time I've done that. But these are important times, ladies and gentlemen. These are important times. We cannot not just go mamby-pamby and walk away from them. Let me play this real quick before we close it out.
Oh, I'm a good old American, now that's just what I am. And for the liberal nation, I do not give a damn. Don't want to rise against her, but I'll gather up my guns. My freedom won't be taken, I'll fight 'em till I've won. I hate a liberal nation and everything they do. I hate the social programs and stimulus bill too. I hate the federal government stripping away our rights. I hate all socialism, time for states to fight. I was born here in this nation, lived here all my life. I love my founding fathers and share their view of rights. Working men and women rather die poor and free, 'cause we know what freedom stands for. No Denny states for me. No universal health care or fairness doctrine touts. We like free market systems, to hell with these bailouts. For all the politicians who think revolt won't brew, if you take away my freedom, my votes won't be for you. No longer will I whisper, this land should be free. I'll voice my opinions, my kids will sure thank me. I don't want no pardons for what I say and am. Obama won't remake me, and I do not give a damn. Oh, I'm a good old American, now that's just what I am. And for a liberal nation, I do not give a damn. Don't want to rise against her, but I'll gather up my guns. My freedom won't be taken, I'll fight 'em till I've won. And I don't want any pardon for what I say and am.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to get up and fight. This is when lightning strikes. And this is what's going to happen next Tuesday when we go to the polls and run the Democrats out of office. Lightning will strike them. And that, folks, is the Medlock Post radio show for today. May God bless America.